Let the train!
You are listening to What the Truck.
Are you ready to truck it? It's time for your Nooner with Dooner. Welcome to Monday, everybody. I got a special guest, too. Look what the cat dragged in. Introduce yourself, young man.
Hello, everybody. My name is Andre Hippix. I'm from Hippix Logistics, carrier transportation company of expediting field.
You know, he reached out to me on LinkedIn. And he said, hey, I'm thinking of coming up to Chattanooga. And you showed up today and you had a motorcycle home with you. Did you motorcycle up here from Nashville?
So actually not from Nashville, although last week me and my wife took a 4-day sabbatical and we went to Pensacola on motorcycles and back. So we do love to trek around, but came from Chattanooga, live here with my family for about a year now, and love riding motorcycle. Gives you a little bit of freedom that you need on a daily dose.
What kind of bike do you ride?
It's a 2002 Sprint Sportster, a Harley Davidson, still carbureted, so I get to work on it a little bit, huff and puff. But yeah, I like it. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, as I understand it, you're a music guy?
Yes, I appreciate music. I've been on a journey through music, and I've also, as a vagabond, traveled with a guitar for half a year around the world and played on the streets, challenging myself and sharing the skills.
So did you catch the Grammys last night?
Unfortunately not. My wife was more important to me.
Well, if you caught the Grammys, they were brought to you by a truck. Take a look at this tweet from my buddy Greg DuBois. He said, at the Grammys 2024, rock on upstairs. We're chilling in the docks at crypto.com arena, ready to do our part. Look at that, man. Logistics is everywhere, is it not?
Oh, yeah. It's phenomenal. I think I even commented on your post and said, hey, give the credit where the credit is due, because drivers are the ones that are making this happen.
Yeah, well, but something happened. Taylor Swift decided to upstage the entire Grammys. During the middle of it, she put this out. Her new album, Dead Poet Society, is dropping. She says, all's fair in love and poetry. I'm sorry, new album, The Tortured Poets Department, out April 19th. That was, oh my gosh, my name is spacing. Who's the guy in Good Will Hunting and Dead Poets? Robin Williams. That was Robin Williams, not Taylor Swift in Dead Poets Society. You excited? You excited for the Super Bowl? You like Taylor Swift? You think it's good for the world?
So I think Taylor Swift is she is a character of two sides. I actually recently learned it on our trip to Florida. A good friend of ours was singing one of her songs at the karaoke we were, and she totally killed it. So that was awesome. But Taylor Swift, she's a happy girl, as everybody knows, but she also got some other side, and that's how our friend told us. There's a whole new side to her that many people that don't listen to her don't know, which is me. But interesting.
Hey, last year was a big year for trucking for her. She gave those $100,000 bonuses to all of her drivers. So for that, we'll give her a little cowboy. She may be the Illuminati. I'm not sure. I know some of you think she is. I don't know. Maybe the Super Bowl's rigged. I don't know. I'm not saying that. Not making those accusations. No, it's not rigged, the spot market, but sometimes it may feel like it's working against you. Craig Fuller has some good news, though. He just tweeted, trucking spot rates have thawed, up 23 cents a mile or 15% since November. This is unusual and a great sign for continued recovery in the trucking market. Now, there was a little blowback. Jim Wanker said 3 major holidays and a countrywide winter storm in this time frame skewing the data. Big shippers have seen capacity return and spot pricing reduce over the past 7 days. Supply continues to leave the market, but not at a rate great enough to return to pre-COVID levels. But here's a little chart for you. Levels are looking pretty good. I mean, they're better than last year. They're not as good as those pandemic highs, but we're above where we are. We're all hoping for that thaw and that recovery, seeing those green shoots, and there you go.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we personally also as a company have been waiting for this year to kick in, and first quarter already showing little improvements, and we're really hoping.
Has Expedite seen the same softness as Drive-In?
Yes. I think we are getting a little improvement in the market right now. We're booking more jobs right now, and more people are coming in. The winter was a little bit hard. We had a lot of guys that just left, and we didn't know how long they were going to leave for, and they just didn't get rates they could, keep their business running for. However, we're just hopeful and waiting for the market to come back up, because drivers are the ones that have really been kind of suffering, and we're being a company that advocates for the drivers. We're all just rooting for everybody.
Nice. Well, we got to tip the band. We're going to get into you in just a second. We got a bunch of awesome guests, but first, let's talk to help put us on this show today. I want to take a second to put these guys on your radar. It's Dynamic Logistics, because I got to say, they're doing logistics the right way. Their TMS software is saving shippers a significant amount of time and money. Check them out at dynamiclogistics.com. That's logistics
Yeah.
With an X.
Dynamic Logistics. I believe we even hold their freight.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
Wow, look at this. Look at this synergy coming up here. This wasn't even planned. Well, on episode 678 of What the Truck, I'm joined by the Tenney Group, Spencer Tenney. He's coming on here near the end of the show. He's going to talk about their annual logistics and supply chain M&A report. We're going to look at what's trending, how the deals went last year, and what he thinks is going to happen this year. Will people be spending again? We'll see. Apparently, it's been a 10-year high for the number of acquirable companies that are going to be on the market this year. Yeah. You do any investing? You looking to buy any companies?
Wow, that's a big jump from where we are as a company right now, but maybe one day once we accomplish our goal of, again, taking care of our drivers.
Well, we're also going to find out how you haul monster loads. We got Black Box Logistics, Will Hopkins. He's here. He talks about the art and the logistics of trucking gigantic pieces of equipment. He pulls cool freight. I'm going to get to take a look at that. And we got the Honorable Jim Sanborn is coming up after you. He believes that for supply chain tech to matter, it has to make life easier. Not a crazy request, does it? Is it?
No, I think we could all have a little bit of that.
Okay, well, and of course, we have you right here. You're Andre Hippix. You're the founder of Hippix Logistics, sir. What brings you down to town?
What brings me down to town is the opportunity to meet you,
yes,
Mr. Timothy Dooner, and also be here. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity, and also just maybe speak out a word on, again, saying that being an owner-operator and a driver first, and then transitioning to being a carrier, I can really relate on the fact that drivers, at least in our corner of the industry of expediting transportation, are underserviced and unappreciated, and we came to the market to change this. And so we're building strong relationships with drivers and holding and growing our fleet and every single person that we work with so that we could better service the industry, whether it's brokerages, freight forwarders, customers. We can really handle it all. And we believe in strong partnership and relationships with specifically drivers who do the hardest part of this industry.
Nice. Well, now you've pled with the audience. You've said your piece. I got a question, though. In your background, I was looking. You not only have a carrier, but you also do vacation rental management. It got me curious. What is harder? Both are about capacity. Both are about moving goods. I mean, people around units, right? There's a lot of similarities, more than you would think.
Yes. There are a lot of similarities. There are some differences. I will say with Airbnb or vacation rental management, that little bit is on the back end right now because my main focus is transportation. It just so it happened when I started the Airbnb management or B&B top management, God blessed us with an opportunity on opening a company in transportation and going into it. So that took over first and foremost. And as you know, we opened right before COVID happened. So there was a big lull with vacation for quite some time. But yeah, I mean, it's serving people, you know, that's really at the end of the day, whether it's transportation or Airbnb management or anything else, I think the calling is in the service to each other. And, you know, I take that mission strongly to my heart and really try to implement it across the board.
You know, one thing you were telling me about before we went on air was some of the transparency issues in Expedite. Expound on that to the audience. How does Expedite work? Because you were telling me a lot of times you show up and you're not really even sure exactly what you're picking up.
Yeah, that is I would say, a problem. We in expediting experience quite often. Our drivers will go to pick up a freight and we don't know what kind of facility it is. Is it an airport or not? I mean, thankfully over time, we kind of learned the zip codes of the airports and we know when that is about to happen. But when we quote jobs, we really don't know the things that are going on. You know, is this, it might be a heavier freight. A freight might be completely different dimensions. Driver arrives and cannot even pick it up because it doesn't fit the vehicle dimensions, or payload is completely different, or we don't even know the value of the freight. So we're really hoping in expediting for transparency and it to come through, hopefully through some technological innovations. And because I think, again, companies will do so much better when being better informed. And we're one of those, so we see the need of that.
What kind of tech would help you out the most right now? Just for the creators out there, the builders, the founders out there, the M&A guys, maybe you could build it instead. What kind of tech can you build here? You got to market.
Ooh, do we want to give up the secrets?
Why, are you building it yourself?
We are. We're definitely working on something proprietary just for ourselves.
Yeah.
So we can improve the market for ourselves and the drivers that we work with. But in generally speaking, like, it would be so cool if there was something like truck stop or DAT board, just something where anyone could come up, sign up as an owner operator or a carrier, and get an understanding of general freight movement and general rates based on the location, where you're picking up, where you're going, and then what that's been booked for, maybe last day, last hour, last month. I think it would be tremendous.
There's plenty of that, like in the dry van space. There's load boards, things like sonar. When you're talking about the expedite space, it just becomes a whole lot murkier. Now, before you even started the company, you were an expedite driver for a little while?
Yes, I was on the road actually for about a year and a half. Started as a driver, worked for a Ukrainian owner operator until I had a benevolent kick in my butt because the guy just went to Ukraine for a month and didn't pay me $1, and I was driving and paying for gas myself while I was about to get married, and we were, going to have a family and kid and everything like that. So I'm sure you can kind of feel when you have family coming in, it's a whole different level.
I love freight, but it's a tough world, man. It's freight don't care.
Freight don't care, and people that playing it too are not always of the greatest caliber too. So, but that was a benevolent kick. Why? Because I knew I needed to step off the van and return equipment and get my own equipment, and that's what I started as an owner operator. I had friends in the industry too at that point, developed relationships, and being an owner operator for about a year and a half, we just saw. And I myself, I experienced things, when inconsistencies, lack of accountability, room for improvement. And we thought, okay, well, why don't we just become the company that gives the jobs to these owner operators like ourselves instead of being the ones receiving them, because we want to do way better than them. And I think we can.
You can. So before I let you go, how big is your fleet now? You've done a little growing.
We've done growing, and we've also lost some, unfortunately, during last year in COVID. So we were at some point at high about 170 plus, and right now we're about 130 owner operators and drivers. We have both, company assets as well as owner ops. But our main thing really, when we look at it, our asset is really the people and people that are already in the industry, because we want to represent them. And there's so many of them. To be honest with you, at this point, we have 5,000 plus applicants that individually applied personally to work with us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, you know what? Before I let you go, you said you're a musician, and I warned you. I was going to drop us a beat, drop us something. Give us the cowbell, whenever someone's live here. Gotta get their hands on it.
All right. Well, let's try something out.
Beautiful. Excellent.
Beatbox.
Reminds me a little. I've been playing a lot of Tekken recently. Little Tekken music.
I have a friend. He's all about Tekken. Every week I get a message from him. Have you played it? Have you started it?
The new one, Part 8?
Yes.
Good. It's
yes.
the best fighting game ever made, people. Get it. 10 out of 10. Dooner says so.
I used to play it on PlayStation 1.
My kid has. We set up the PlayStation Classic last night, and it has Tekken 3 on it. So my 7-year-old was playing through it, and he unlocked all the characters.
Oh my god!
It was a good moment. He was feeling a little sick. But hey, thank you so much for stopping by. People who want to see your site, where do they go?
Very easy. HippixLogistics.com is our website. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Hippix Logistics. On YouTube, we're just starting out, very new to social media, because we've been tirelessly working every single day in the industry. But little by little, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, website.
Well, sir, it was great to meet you. Thank you so much. Have a safe trip back on your motorcycle.
Thank you.
Take care. And then just exit stage left, my friend. All right, everybody. Meanwhile, so this dropped. No, I'm not talking about the Cybertruck. I'm talking about what's on this man's head. It's the Apple Vision Pro. We talk about tech a lot on here. What do you think of the Apple Vision Pro? It's got that really standout cord, too, because you can't put the battery pack in it, and he's driving. I saw a lot of reviews on this, and you might be a little nervous. It's not like an Oculus. There is pass-through, but it's still like wearing goggles. You don't have great peripheral view. I'm sure he's on some sort of self-driving right there, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Now, I think the Honorable Jim Sanborn is back in my bullpen. Now let's see if we can bring him up. Mr. Jim Sanborn, how you doing, sir?
Dooner, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You sound great. Can you hear me?
Oh, thank goodness.
Thank goodness. We fixed it, man. We fixed it. It took a little
good.
judicial act in the back. It's technology, man. The system crashed, and they fixed it up for you. It's the Honorable Jim Sanborn, Network Marketplace Director at E2 Open. Jim, how you doing, sir? You saw those Vision Pro goggles. I know you're a tech guy. You look like you're wearing regular glasses, though.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I'm a big fan. I can't wait to get to the Apple Store and actually put some on my face and see. And here's, we want to talk about tech making your life easier. I spend my day at my desk doing this because of my bifocals all the time. And by the end of the day, I have a bad neck. And if I could just stick my monitors to my face and do my work, I'm talking not walking down the street or walking around the house, but instead of being in the desk chair, I'm in the Barca Lounger or the Lazy Boy. That's making my life easier. I love it. I can't
That
wait.
that's what some people have said. They're like, look, you can't think of it as a replacement for, and I know all the influencers are going out in public because it looks funny. It makes for like funny clips, but I don't think that's sort of like the real world usage so much as replacing your laptop, right? I mean, that's what people say it's really for. I'm trying to convince the team here to get one so we can put some sonar charts in it and like see how that display looks. We could make some content with this thing.
I got the million idea for you, and that is you wear it to like food shippers,
Yeah.
and it just identifies as you walk around. Oh, that's just a broker. That's a broker. Oh, there's a shipper. Go get him.
Yeah, someone showed it in the grocery store, and where it is right now, it didn't seem functional at all because you'd look and then you'd have to pull up Notepad like with your hands, and you'd have to mark. Now, if you could do visually identifying things, though, you could do this in a warehouse, you could do this in a grocery store on both the consumer and the commercial level. You might be onto something. Now, I don't know if people are actually going to wear these into Publix, but maybe within the warehouse.
Yeah, maybe in the warehouse, in the workplace. I can see a lot of those kind of applications for you. But you were right earlier with the peripheral vision. That's something that's got to be figured out.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I like that. I'm helping you keep your New Year's resolution. You DM me on LinkedIn, said your New Year's resolution was to come on the show, and you wanted to talk about supply chain tech, especially stuff that makes life easier. What do you like right now, Jim?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. In full disclosure, I got a partnership with one of these companies. So,
Okay.
HubTech, their Tabby solution is a rate management system. And instead of getting those phone calls and emails and God forbid a fax asking you for a rate on a load, we can hook up the systems to just talk to each other so that when the shipper has a load available, they can send it out to that solution and it'll calculate up the rate for them, take into account all of the different variables and get them an actionable, executable rate within just a few seconds. Totally saves labor on both sides of that transaction. And I really love that.
All right. HubTech Tabby. Anything else you like out there in 24?
Yeah, the other thing to talk about is the scheduling consortium and where that's headed. And I think there's a headline scrolling down below us about Uber Freight launching that.
Yeah.
But they're if you're not familiar with the consortium, about a dozen companies have gotten together, E2Open included, to try and figure out how we can unify under one standard so that we can automate that the appointment scheduling process. And if you think about the person that sits at their desk all day, maybe at some point they've got the Apple Vision, but they're going back and forth between different shipper TMSs to make those appointments. And I think the story today was Uber sets like 6 million of those appointments. Now they're huge, but you can see how that scales. If you've got to have humans making those appointments, being able to automate that is a huge cost savings.
So how does it work? Well, I've had them on before. They've talked to me about it. It's still something newer, so I'm still learning. The audience is still learning. How does this work?
Yeah, when you think about it, it acts much like going in through the portal. It's just a lot more efficient about it. So the API can go and find the appointments that are available, and then the API can also request one of those appointments and get a confirmation that you've now booked that appointment. So instead of having to call that location or again go back and forth between the different web portals, it can actually use the APIs to find out what's available and then make that schedule for you.
Interesting. Why do you think that so many companies, well, I mean, not so many, but a dozen or so now have joined on board? They've teamed up with the Uber Freights of the world. I believe JB Hunt is involved. Convoy was involved. I remember we had a wheelbarrow race in 2022 at one of our events, and those three booths were next to each other. And rumor has it, according to lore, that is where the supply chain scheduling consortium comes from. I cannot neither confirm nor deny that. But what's the state of it now? And like, why would E2Open join? Why would you team up with potential rivals and other companies in the space?
Yeah, and that's a great question because at the end of it, we're trying to make supply chains more efficient. That's what E2Open's all about. And from raw materials to finished goods in the hands of consumers, we're working every day to try and make that process more efficient. And when you talk about the thousands of carriers that access our system on a daily basis and the hundreds of shippers that are in there, the labor that's involved in just that one job function of scheduling appointments is incredible. And when we process about 1.5 million loads through our system on a monthly basis, And if each one of those takes 5 minutes to do an appointment, I can't do that math in my head, but it's a lot. If we can automate that and free up some of these people so that they can do more productive things and more profitable things, and maybe not have to work 16 hours a day and overdose on Zim, then I think we're doing the world some good.
Yeah, you make a good point there about the overdosing on Zin. Nobody needs that. This is exciting. So, how do you bring more partners into this? How do you get more partners into the fold? How do you have people see the vision that you're seeing? So this is more, because any network, right? The bigger you can make it, the better it's going to be. The more people it can serve. How do you grow this?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's opportunity for the larger carriers to develop their own solutions for appointment scheduling and take advantage of all of the different shipper systems that they work with and being able to connect to them. I think there's a secondary sort of opportunity there for a partner tech company to come along and say, we could be the sort of clearinghouse for these appointments and act as a middleware between, so that in the future, it doesn't matter what shipper TMS, they should all be on E2 Open. But if they're not, it doesn't matter which one you're connecting to, the appointments work the same way. And I love that standardization to help all of us be more efficient.
What do you think is going to trend in tech this year? Will it be the Apple Vision Pro? Any other than the scheduling consortium? What do you see as a category that's really going to take off?
Yeah, I mean, I like freight tech actually as a category, just because we're and you had up earlier, maybe we've hit the bottom, maybe we're coming up, and to be able to position your company to take advantage of the tech, to make yourself more profitable, make yourself more efficient. I think this is the time to do it before we're into that boom and you're still implementing while everybody else is executing.
What do you say to people who sort of have that sort of zero-sum thinking when it comes to tech, and you bring it up, and there's always like the person who'll jump in on LinkedIn and go, tech will never work, it's a business of relationships. Like, why can't it be both? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, tech, right, this helps me communicate with people, this helps me book guests, this helps me keep my network via social media, phone calls, and text, and this is tech. Like, it hasn't stopped that, it's made that easier.
Yeah, and I think you let the tech do the easy stuff, take that mundane work off of your plate so that you can focus on those human relationships, whether it's with your customers, which is a great use of your time, problem solving, the exceptions that the computer can't handle, or again, not overdosing on Zen, and maybe spend some time with your family and your loved ones instead of being at work all the time.
Yeah, although that Apple Vision Pro may be not that helpful with spending time with the loved ones, Jim.
I can't imagine sitting around the living room and there's 5 people with all that strapped to their head in the same room. That's not what I'm thinking.
Yeah, one disappointing thing is, like, when you see the ads, they make it look like the eyes like are super clear, like the virtual eyes, and they track you. But like all of the actual reviews I've seen, all the reviewers mention that they're super like murky. Like you can't really sort of tell. They're kind of glared out when the eyeballs. It doesn't really function the way it does in the ad.
Yeah, and I think this would be a lot less interesting if both of us were wearing goggles instead of actually looking at each other.
Have you seen the little virtual avatar that it makes of you? Marcus Brownlee was recording it. It's still kind of weird. It looked better than like the metaverse floating like bodies thing, but it still like looked a little unnatural, a little uncanny valley.
Right. I still prefer to see people's faces. Maybe I'm just old school.
Well, hey, I'm talking to a very smart gentleman about M&A a little later in the show, but what do you think? You think you're going to see a lot of deals in freight tech? Last year was a very, very tough space. You know, Convoy led the charge of companies that had taken in way too much valuation. The market didn't like it. There's a lot of companies in that position. I think Spencer's going to tell us in just a little bit that this is like a 10-year high for deal opportunities or companies that may be for sale. What do you think you're going to see this year?
Well, I'm optimistic, and maybe it's just because spring training's right around the corner,
Yes.
and that always brings new hope, right? But I really hope that the news that we start to see out of that space is not the the layoffs and the closing doors and the shutting down and the bankruptcy sales. I'm hoping that we see some really nice strategic acquisitions in the space, whether it's on the tech side or on the carrier and broker side, right? We're too fragmented, and we're headed for some consolidation. And I hope that in this next year, 2024, that those are positive mergers, not the sort of negative ones that we saw last year.
Jim, anyone wants to talk tech, they want to talk supply chain scheduling consortium with you, where do I send them to?
So our website, e2open.com, we have a carrier marketplace sort of division of that, which is how you get a hold of me, carrier marketplace at e2open.com. And appreciate you, Dooner. Hope we can do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Uber Freight's going to be on, I think, either later this week or next week to talk about that press release they just put out about the scheduling consortium. So we'll go even deeper on that. Thank you so much for your time today, Jim.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care, buddy. Okay, let's see here. Let's get Tip the Band. Dynamic Logistics gives you total control of your entire shipping operations. Live locations and status updates every 15 minutes and the ability to combine multiple orders into a single load, leading to significant savings. Check them out at dynamiclogistics.com. That's logistics with an X. Elsewhere. More Apple Vision Pro. People taking them out in public. Looks like G-Face right here. It's when you work in supply chain. You're trying to get home from work, but you got a load to book. You can stop right in the middle of the road and make sure that thing's scheduled for you. I could see Will Hopkins, booking a little heavy haul with that because he's here with us right now. Will Hopkins, founder at Black Box Logistics. Will, what's up, my man?
Dooner, what's up, man? Appreciate you having me on.
Hey,
Get to it.
I was laughing at your joke. You had a good one on LinkedIn. It said, moves one load to Ken, changes job title in signature form, national account manager to international account manager.
Yeah, man, it's actually stemmed from a guy we have in office. He's our assistant GM. Love him. And it was a joke, but he moved one load to Canada, and he walked in. He's like, hey, can I change my job title to international account manager? And we all had a good laugh about it.
Oh, well, beautiful. I love it. By the way, people who don't know, I love all your posts on LinkedIn. You get into market, you show a bunch of heavy haul and all that kind of stuff. Some of these awesome loads you do. But people who don't know, what's the elevator on Black Box?
What do you mean by elevator?
Like the elevator pitch.
Oh.
Like, what would you tell someone your company is?
Yeah, so as far as the way that we do business, we strive to be small enough to care, big enough to deliver. We specialize in open deck freight, so flatbed, step decks, hot shots, RGNs. We will do vans and reefers, but we're in Birmingham, Alabama, big steel market, and that's kind of been our bread and butter, small to medium-sized companies, a few enterprise accounts, but mostly small to medium-sized relationship-based business.
By the way, whose jersey is that behind you? I'm seeing a number 7, but I can't read far enough to see the name.
It's Michael Vick. I actually, my gym had a silent auction. I walked in, and I was like, man, surely other people place bids, so I placed the minimum bid for that, and then I got a John Daly over here in this corner that you can see it. Ended up winning 4 or 5 things. Didn't have anywhere to put them, so I figured, hey, throw them up in the office.
Beautiful. Hey, you haven't gotten yourself one of those Apple Vision Pros yet, have you? Could you see yourself booking loads in one?
Yeah, so I like that you guys are talking about that. I was on TikTok yesterday, and I swear every video of my feed was just those goggles, and man, they look cool. I mean, I'm gonna check them out.
Do you think people look cool in those? Or you think they look cool themselves?
Not that they look cool wearing them, but just the graphics and the capabilities is pretty fascinating.
Dude, let's look at some of your freight, because you pull my favorite type of freight, the stuff that's really, really nice and fun to look at. It's got strap work on it. It's really big. Show this first picture here. Talk a little bit about some of these types of, some of this freight, like this move, for example, here.
Yeah, so, I mean, we move a little bit of everything. So on my LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of oversized loads just because they're, that they catch your attention. They're interesting. They're cool loads. We also move some boring stuff, just some bar and coils or whatnot. I'm not really sure what that one is. That's one of our guys' loads, but I mean, looks like maybe 10 feet wide. Pretty straightforward oversized load. Nothing too crazy there.
How is managing this type of freight different than managing sort of like your general FAK freight?
Man, it's not too much different. You just need to be careful about who you book. So the biggest thing with oversized freight, in my opinion, is that a lot of people, they might see the permit price and say, okay, it costs this much, but you're not paying face value for the permits. And I use this metaphor analogy somewhat often. It's almost similar to when you're working with, say, a plumber. You're not paying them to beat on the pipes. You're paying them to know where to beat on them and how to do it. So as long as you're using good carriers, it's really headache free, and it's, in my opinion, it can be much easier than some of that general freight. You just need to be careful. A lot of them need crane appointments and whatnot, so you need to stay on top of it. But I mean, man, we love it. It's our favorite type of freight.
How do you find the right drivers for these type of loads? There's more touch. Again, there's the strap work. Are these like flatbed guys who come in? How do you bring in the heavy haul project freight kind of guy?
So it just depends. And really what I've done is I've sourced my carriers through, just brokering over the years. So, a lot of times there's stuff that I'm not able to quote off the hip. For example, there was like a 130-foot load that I moved about a month ago, and I've got a guy that I know can do it. So I just call him and I'm like, hey, this is what we're working with. He tells me how much. And, they have the experience and I trust them, and they price it out right. So thankfully we work with a good group of carriers that make it easy on us, really. Again, the thing with oversized loads, a lot of them pay a lot. So if you take one to a load board, you post it out, and it's paying $10,000, everybody's going to call you. They're like, well, I'll do just about anything for $10,000, and they don't know what they're doing. You can get into some trouble, but we try to source them off the boards through kind of our carrier network, just referrals and whatnot.
Wow, what's like the coolest thing that you've hauled that you can talk about?
So I didn't personally haul this. This is actually recent. I don't know if it's the coolest, but what comes to mind. One of our guys moved a plane engine for the military a couple of weeks ago, and I posted that on LinkedIn maybe last week. That was a really cool one, just because it's not too often that we haul something like that. Anything with the military is usually pretty cool. A lot of Humvees, tanks, that sort of thing. But then, a lot of it's just, like wide steel plate or aggregate equipment, just all kinds of stuff.
What happens when something goes wrong?
Well, it depends what goes wrong. I guess I would need an example, just like with anything with freight, right? There's so many variables or things that could happen. But for the most part, our customers are good about getting us exactly what we need for the permits, right? We usually, if it's something real obscure, we'll get pictures of it, let the driver see it. If it's a real big move, the driver might even go over there a day early to kind of get a look at it and get a game plan together. So we really try to cut down on any issues. And, really, I would need kind of a specific example. I don't want to say that everything's always smooth sailing, but for the most part, we don't have anything too crazy happen. Sometimes, like I mentioned with those crane appointments, if there's any kind of delay, we just need to coordinate on both ends and make sure that nobody's paying for a crane without a truck there.
Will, do logistics companies need to own who they are? You've been crushing it on LinkedIn. You had another one here that said, brother, buying a one-power unit doesn't make your brokerage asset-based. It's okay to be a 3PL. It's okay not to run trucks. Proud 3PL checking in. Explain your position here.
Yeah, so, having assets is great, right? But if you don't have assets, don't pitch that you have assets. And it's okay to be third party. I feel like in our industry, the word broker kind of has a dirty connotation to it, but it's okay. It's what we do. We broker freight, just own who you are, take pride in it. And again, like our guys, we're not trying to present anything that we're not. And I hear about and know quite a few companies that are pitching the whole asset-based thing. And you might have an asset, but if you're going to broker their loads, just be transparent. I feel like if you go into a transaction with dishonesty, it's kind of always hanging over you, So we found success in just kind of owning who we are and not being ashamed to be, a third-party brokerage.
Robert Pogue had a good reply here. He said, it's pretty easy to identify those companies that started out as a trucking company, then started a 3PL to better serve their customers, versus those that use deceptive wording and practices to try to make themselves appear to be something they are not. Just be proud of who you are and what you do. It's the same message I used to tell my support soldiers in the special ops units. Some of them tried to put out the message they were something they weren't as well. Be great at what you do.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. I thought it was a fantastic comment. I think that's the best way to do business.
Well, Will, before I let you go, who should reach out to you? Who do you want to work with? What kind of freight do you want to pull? How do you want to prop up Black Box?
So we've got somebody for everything, right? So me personally, my experience is open deck, oversized freight. But again, we've got 2-3 guys that are just running reefers or vans or expedited. So really, we wouldn't turn anything away, right? But again, our specialties in open deck, steel, raw materials, that sort of thing. But yeah, whoever, if you want another look at your loads, Black Box Logistics, you can find me on LinkedIn or Hopkins at shipblbx.com.
Very, very cool. Will, thank you so much, man. Next time you got an awesome shipment, let's go take a look at it. It was great to meet you today.
Yes, you too. Thanks for having me on.
Take it easy. All right. This is getting a little weird. Got another guy in a Vision Pro out in public, and this guy's got a robot dog with him. He's remote controlling with his eyes on. It's a brave new world. What is this going to look like by the end of the decade? Do you think this thing flops like a year from now? Nobody has these, or it gets cheaper. A lot of people get them. Spencer, have you been eyeballing these? You got a Vision Pro already, don't you?
That would be a negative, Dooner. So, but who knows? Who knows, right?
We got Spencer Tenney with us. He's the president and CEO at the 10A Group. How you doing, sir? How's your year treating you so far?
Oh, it's great. I'm doing wonderful. Very grateful to be doing the work that we're doing to serve business owners in this space. It's going to be an exciting year. So glad to be with you to talk about it.
What was January about for you? That's kind of setting the temperature. Although this January is a little bit weird, a lot of storms. I feel my kids were only in school like 5 days out of like the entire month. It was very sort of a strange start-stop month. What were you seeing in January?
Well, I would say it was invigorating on the business front. It was a little stressful on the home front, as you mentioned, because of the snow. I was having PTSD from COVID, being with my kids and trying to help them with homework while they were home. So very excited to be moving into February and getting on with what needs to be done here.
Yeah, it's almost like doing your kids' homework. It's almost like being stuck on that show where you're smarter than a third grader, and you don't really remember how much basic stuff you have forgot over the years. No, it was cool. We got killed. You're in Tennessee too, aren't you? We like just 1 inch of snow. It's the ice here. We don't have like salt trucks in this state like they do in the Northeast. They don't like pre-treat the roads. And if you're on a back road, like you got to wait until the city or town comes to you. There's some streets that took like, I think the sun just came out and melted it. They never even got any help.
No, I know. We have people that on our team that they come from all over, and they're like, "What is going on here? What is the big deal?" And we're just saying, "Hey, this is for your own safety, because
really
this is not like where you came from. So just suck it up, and we'll get back to work as quickly as possible."
Let's talk about deals. Let's talk about money. We kind of teased it coming into this. First of all, how was 2023? I think there's a perception that 2023, especially in freight, was very bad. A lot of values were drawn down. I don't think we reported like this. This is why we're going to get into data too. I don't think we reported on as many deals, but maybe there were than when I thought. And when I look at it, there were some notable ones. Look at these notable deals in 2023. You had Knight Swift acquiring U.S. Express, obviously hit close to home with the with Craig Fuller's dad's involvement over there. Schneider acquired M&M Transport. Hub Group brought Forward Air's final mile segment. TFI got Daisuke. Cox Automotive got ArcBest, FleetNet America. There's a whole bunch on here. How was 2023?
Well, we have to look at the data, right? So according to Capital IQ, the total value of the transactions compared to 2022 was down 82%. That's a big number.
Whoa.
The volume of transactions was down 33%. So to your point, there were certainly notable transactions, but what we can clearly see is that there was a third fewer of them, and they were much smaller than what we saw in 2022.
Now, is that a correction, right? Because when you look at 2021, there's a lot of companies, Convoy, for example, that a lot of the reason was death by overfunding, right? They got these crazy sky-high nosebleed valuations in 2021, even the beginning of 2022. And then when it came time to be like, wait a second, what is this really worth? We saw a big change. And I know just like the vibe that I felt from just being at Freightways and not seeing all the headlines in 2023 is you wouldn't see those crazy unicorn valuations for like a visibility provider or a digital freight matcher.
Well, the fundamentals that were driving M&A in 2022 were still very much there in 2023, but here's what was different. Number one, the cost of capital is extremely different. We don't have to have free debt, which is what we've effectively had the last couple of years in the M&A world. We don't need that to have significant transaction activity, but we do need stability. And so what was very challenging in the market over the last year was that since 2022, there was 11 individual interest rate hikes. And so that type of increase of capital that fast, it just was very difficult for folks that wanted to exit, that wanted to begin the process of selling their business. It was just very difficult for them to lean in and say, hey, this makes sense for me right now, because it probably didn't. And so we had a tremendous shortage of supply of companies available to purchase. And then the other part of it, back when you have the freight market, which was just free falling, it was just extremely difficult for buyers and sellers to get alignment on the value of the company. Even when they had willing parties. When month over month companies are, the performance is temporarily deteriorating, it's just very difficult to get alignment and actually get a deal done. So I think what you're going to see is a lot of that activity just ultimately push into 2024.
Let's look at some of that data. You guys, Tenney Group put out a great report. You can go to tenneygroup.com. You can check out the full report there. We'll get into just a little bit of it, but you want the full thing, go over there. First, this is offers by buyer type. Break down this for us. What am I looking at here?
Yeah, so what we try to do with our report, compared to a lot of different places where you can get similar data, is that we're trying to provide a lens into what we're actually seeing with lower middle market deals. Companies that we represent that have somewhere between 20 to 300 million in annual revenue, all transportation logistics. And what we're trying to understand is like who is actually doing the deals. And so what we're seeing here, this is kind of broken up by buyer type. And why we think this is interesting is because when people are planning their exits and they're thinking about what do I need to do to get ready to sell my company, well, they need to know who's going to be the most probable investors for the business and buyers. And so when they do that, they typically work on the business in the right way, and they can do the right things. But what you're looking at in that stat is even in 4 different economic climates and freight markets over the last 4 years, what we typically see is about 85% of the total offers generated, they continue to come from folks that have an existing investment interest in transportation in some form or fashion. It might be direct or it could be in an adjacent space. But the point is, people invest in transportation because they understand it and they're not afraid of it. And I think when people understand that that's what the data says, then they approach the process of selling their business more constructively and more effectively.
So is that what like strategic means versus private equity without platform, private equity with platform, private investor, these certain categories that we're looking at on here?
Right. So like an example, one of those notable deals that we did was Big G Express acquiring RTR Transportation. Both kind of, one is they're both in Tennessee. They're both kind of regional drive-in carriers. What was interesting about it is one was an ESOP. And so Big G, who was the ESOP, was able to address a lot of the needs that were important to the sellers, RTR Transportation, our clients, because of that ESOP benefit that they were able to pass on to the employees, because our client was really serious about they wanted to take care of their employees. Well, selling to a buyer that already had an ESOP set up for their organization just made a very logical fit. So those types of things are what drives these strategic type transactions.
Let's take a look at structure over here. And there's a lot of bars on here. And it says contingent consideration, earnout plus seller financing. What does this tell us?
Well, there's a couple things here. And I'll say this, Dooner, like this is huge asterisk because this is a relatively small sample. But what we want to try to convey is that, number one, structure certainly plays a significant part in almost all transactions. And so year over year, these are different type companies, and depending on the size of them, they might kind of shift the results. But the main thing here is we're just trying to provide a different lens year over year about the things that are driving deals. In 2023, and then also even in 2020, where we major disruption around COVID in 2020, and then similar disruption in the freight market. Well, when you have that type of disruption, you generally attract more structure, more earnout type scenarios, because it allows buyers and sellers to approach risk constructively. So, no party is taking more risk than is appropriate based on what's happening in the business at that time of the close of the transaction. So the main thing is that we're just trying to provide some color for folks to understand how this works and what are some of the characteristics that drive structure in the deal.
All of them were around 61%, except for 2021, which is 44.5%. Why the difference?
Well, I think part of that was in our transactions, there was a lot of folks that needed protection. There was a lot of wonderful performance, but a lot of folks were chalking that up to broader macro tailwinds. And so they wanted to make sure in that particular period that it wasn't just a one-time event. And so you saw a lot of earnouts that, hey, if you continue to do this, we'll pay you for it and gladly pay you for it. But if this was a once-in-a-lifetime type non-reoccurring record performance, we need to account for that in structure. And so that was a key characteristic in 2021.
Now, when we talk about cash considerations from strategic buyers and from financial buyers, what's the difference there? What do they value?
Well, part of it is just it can be a couple different things. I mean, private equity approaches in a couple different ways. They want to limit the amount of leverage on the business. They want to try to keep it healthy, and they want to set it up to exit in 4 to 5 years. Whereas a strategic, maybe they're less concerned about the capital structure that they're setting up because they already have built-in synergies that they know that they're going to have post-transaction. So they approach debt and equity a little bit differently when they're structuring the deal. So it's very common for your strategic buyers to make an offer that's very clean. It's all cash. Maybe it's not the highest price the market can make available, but it's clean, it's straightforward, and it's simple. And so I think that part of those is just like, what is the private equity trying to do versus what is the strategic trying to accomplish post-transaction? And some of it's just like, what are the levers that they have available to pull? If you're talking about a publicly traded strategic, they have a whole different war chest of different instruments they can use to get deals done versus your kind of regional strategic. But the main deal is they're trying to structure the way to make it as compelling as possible for the seller to accept it. And if they have the cash available to do it, and they have the post-transaction synergies available to help them recoup that initial equity investment, then that's a no-brainer for them.
Knowing what not to buy can be as important as knowing what to buy. How do you know something's like sort of this uninvestable zombie company? Maybe it was valued too high. Maybe it's just not the market fit. What are your tips for identifying those kind of companies, the ones to just completely avoid?
No, I think a lot of things. I'm a big fan of the work that the folks over at KSM Transport Advisors do with their network analysis. And so what they do is they're able to look at a company and to provide an analysis of where their strengths and weaknesses are within their existing network. And then you can effectively design an acquisition target profile around the most accretive possible transaction that you could create by filling those gaps and creating more fleet utilization and more efficiencies across the board. So for me, the discipline of reverse engineering that process and not just saying I want to grow and it doesn't really matter, I think starting with that discipline is a great best practice for acquirers that expect much from their acquisitions and the equity that they put in them. So that's something that I would do. And the other part of it is just some of it's just, it might be a great company, but it's just culturally just on a different universe. And so I think that's for me, the folks that I look at that have done this the last 50 years, since my family's been doing this, that's just kind of a non-starter. If it's not going to be a strong culture fit, if there's just too much risk post-transaction from an integration standpoint to fool with it. So just move on, get something that's a tighter fit culturally, and almost always you'll have a much smoother transaction and you'll create more value from it.
Are there certain categories that nobody's interested in 2024? Like, I don't know, blockchain, digital freight matching. Is there something that's just kind of like, if it's in a pitch deck, you're probably you got to rethink it. You're going to get kicked out of the room?
No, I don't think so. I've been doing this a long time, and there's, when we're talking to somebody, we want to be, we're doing our diligence just like they're doing like a buyer's doing a diligence on the deal. Like, we don't want to waste our time trying to sell something that we don't think that it can be sold. I think the realities are that we're not dealing with no market. We might be dealing with a very narrow market. So the things that we're considering are, okay, if we have a pool of, call it half a dozen strategic buyers who should do this deal, then we have to look at, like, okay, did they just do a deal? Are they still integrating that deal? Can they give this full consideration right now? I think that's what's some of the realities around trying to market a company that is very unique. Actually being a niche type operation is actually very good in some ways. But honestly, I think the things that are harder, if it's just your kind of, boilerplate, drive in, very mediocre performance, high exposure to spot rate. I mean, those are the ones that are going to have, old equipment. Those are the ones that are going to be the hardest to actually find an audience, just because it's hard to find value there.
Speaking of M&A, what do you think about our own founder and CEO, Craig Fuller, buying FreightWaves Media from FreightWaves Sonar to wrap into his big Firecrown brand?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of fascinated by that, what that means. And so, does that mean you're the boss now, or what does that mean? I don't.
Still the boss of What the Truck. That's about it. Just still the boss of What the Truck. I got my own little domain. I got my own kingdom.
No, I think it's great in terms of for me. I'm still kind of getting some of the facts just from some of the headlines and some of the things that we're all still taking in. But I like the discipline of it. I like it when I see organizations double downing on their core strengths, and effectively that's what I see what's happening here. And so it looks like something that's going to be exciting for the organization, and I'm interested to see what you guys do next. I'm excited for Craig.
Yeah, me too. Well, in your report, it said supply of companies to purchase hits 10-year high. That sounds like it could be a very potential to be in a very electric market in 2024. What is your prediction? How do you think this year goes?
Yeah, so there's two things going on as part of that. Number one, in 2023, according to ATRI, the average cost per mile per truck was up 21.3%. That's an enormous number. So that's going to, the only way no one can absorb that. You have to, and you can't really offset it through organic growth, which means that there's going to be more new buyers coming to the table than probably we've ever seen for T&L type M&A work, just to offset these growing expenses. Now, why we think there's going to be so many sellers is because we've effectively come up like 2020, a huge demographic of aging baby boomer business owners should have exited. But they kind of got on this roller coaster and haven't been able to get off since then because of COVID. And then we had, a year, a record year, the year of a lifetime in terms of profitability and riding those tailwinds of that year. 2022 had equipment values, was making things kind of confusing. And then 2023, we have a horrible freight market, interest rate hikes, all the things. So I would say, according to our data, a significant portion of folks who should have exited just didn't. And so now they're out of reasons to not exit. And so they're going to accept reasonable valuations for their business because, quite frankly, they're out of gas. And they prefer to exit with market valuations versus double downing and expanding their existing exposure with no greater certainty that the conditions will be better in the future. So you put all that in a pot, and we think that there's going to be just a huge spike of activity, particularly for your small and mid-size T&L companies, both on the brokerage and on the truckload side. And for me, that's exciting. I think you're going to see a tremendous shift in the competitive landscape. And I think there's going to be tons of folks that reinvent themselves and change the entire trajectory of their company's futures.
Any particular company I think gets sold this year? Any big names?
Ooh, that's dangerous. I got to be careful about that.
Yeah.
So, no, I do think I don't think that you're going to see a ton of blockbuster deals. I don't think the conditions really promote that. Yeah. But I do think we'll see some significant transactions, and the reason being, when you have pressure coming off this year like we had, when you had 30% reduction freight rates, it forces people to really open up the playbook about creating and protecting business value. And so because of that, and because of just, there's all kinds of reasons for there to be pain within large organizations, I think that you'll see some major transactions get done, quite frankly, just because investors will see this as a time to get a value type transformational deal completed. I think it was very challenging and very expensive to get that done in the last 24 months. This might be a way to, literally transform the whole industry at a much more economical price point.
I get it. So, hey, beleaguered founders, you may be able to get out. You may be able to sell. PE might be happy with the valuation. You might not be the happiest with it, but hey, there's a lot of deals on the market. Spencer, it's a great report. How do people go and find it?
So the best place is just go to our website, thetennygroup.com, hit on insights, and that's where you'll be. Or you can just follow me on LinkedIn, and you can find it on my direct page, Spencer Tenney.
Spencer, who's winning the Super Bowl?
I'm probably going to go with Chiefs, but hey, you reminded me of something. We'll go with Chiefs.
It's the Chiefs. All right. The Taylor Swift and the Chiefs. Spencer's got it. Spencer, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for giving us some of these shocking numbers about what's going on in M&A. Very interesting to hear. Find me on Twitter at Timothy Dooner. Find this show on social media at FW What the Truck. Find all our back episodes wherever you get audio podcasts, or if you want video, hey, on Spotify, we're on video, or Freightwaves YouTube page, entire playlist of every single Freightwaves episode. Take care, don't be a stranger, and see you Wednesday.